you're pretty much focusing your efforts or your agency on the larger businesses. Medical equipment is expensive. If you're
That's what I'm
a machine
arguing.
shop, you might be buying something pretty expensive there too.
Because although the law has been on the books since the 1930s, it's not well known, it's not well advertised. Every state that has a sales tax has the same law, so it's to everybody, but people don't think about it.
Right.
And it's not something like a tax return or a withholding statement or things you might get regularly. In fact, there's a lot of times I do it more now that I'm on this board. But before, I'd buy something, I wouldn't even look at the receipt. I just assumed sales tax was charged, it was done right. I wouldn't look if I was overcharged or undercharged.
Well, you touched on something a little bit ago, and it strikes right to the heart of what we're describing right now, and that's the internet sales. Because many people go on the internet, they're price shopping, sometimes even outside of the country, but for the most part within the country for something that meets their needs. Sometimes there's sales tax charged there, sometimes there's not. And so do we owe sales tax on everything we buy on the internet?
Yes. That's what the law says.
That's shocking.
That's what the law says.
And then that goes back to what you're talking about. How do you enforce that? You're not like hardwired into the internet to know where these things are, and if you were, you wouldn't have the resources to monitor all the transactions anyway.
And how do I keep track of it as a customer, my purchases, to fill out this form? Do I do it every time? Do I wait till the end of the year? It is so complex for an average family. It literally is uncollectible.
Well, and the internet is kind of like this frontier. We've been doing it now for, I think it was about 1995 when I first started becoming aware of, other than for educational institutions, that there is this thing out there, and it's just grown phenomenally. You have a lot of sales taking place that way. And so most people probably do feel like, hey, I got to pass on this tax, but they actually do owe it.
Yeah. And we're very aggressive against out-of-state companies that do any business in California. So a lot of them, through their internet sales, now charge sales tax, which, again, I need to look to make sure so I don't pay twice if I want to be a good citizen, because they have nexus. That is, they have one salesman, one repairman, one installer, one whatever, who visits California. In fact, we made a ruling, if you're an out-of-state company and you visit California 3 times a year, you're Californian. You're a California retailer. You must register us. You must charge sales tax to all your California customers.
So someone in your organization then will look to see who's doing business in California, even though they're located elsewhere, and then give them a visit and try to make sure we're getting our fair share.
There's one guy we caught. I voted against it because I thought 3 visits. He was a medical equipment salesman, and we caught him at a trade show. He wasn't selling the product here, but he was in California showing it. We said, you're a California retailer. Upstate New York guy.
Okay, well, I had a couple of questions I wrote out here, and you've taken care of most of that stuff. Who needs to register for a sales permit?
Anybody that sells property in California, whether they're one of the Tupperware, Amway type home-based businesses, or whether they're
the retail
they're a big retail operation. It's interesting. Everybody thinks of the big guys, and that's where we get most of the tax. But we have almost 1 million retailers registered in California. And you think of it, 37 million people. That's a substantial part of our population's in the retail business in one way or another.
Wow. But there again, you have a collectability problem, don't you?
Yes, we do. With the smaller ones, it's educating them. They're mom and pop operations. They're not like Walmart with a tax department. They're all by themselves. So making sure that they're educated as the tax laws, that they understand the words, is with your district like mine. I have a lot of retailers that are limited English speaking, and I keep arguing with our auditors and other people. Don't assume that because we understand the word sales tax or tangible personal property that translates into Spanish or Chinese or Indian at all. It may have no meaning to those people, even though you could look up the words in the dictionary. It still doesn't mean what we think it should mean tax-wise. And most of these immigrants come from countries that don't even have a sales tax. They have a VAT, a value-added tax, which is different, but it's on transactions. Or they have dictatorships where everything belongs to the government. So we're educating a lot of these immigrants on just what a California sales tax is.
Well, and it's probably not just sales tax. I'm sure there's income tax. A lot of the taxes we do that require, the business to assess them and then to willingly give them up again later on, probably run into a problem, because I can think
tremendous.
of restaurants or the stores I go in where they say cash only. And I'm wondering, I mean, it's not my responsibility to monitor what happens to that dollar bill when it goes in that register, but how do you handle something like that?
If they don't keep good records, cash-only operation, we will make up their business for them. Our auditors will go in and say, your restaurant, will compare you to the restaurant down the street. We'll go look at all the people you bought wholesale food from, and we'll do a markup test, and then we'll calculate the sales tax you should have collected.
Okay.
And then the burden's on you to prove us
Right,
wrong, which
right.
is just really, really bad.
See, I can appreciate that, you know, sometimes credit cards, maybe there's nothing on the other end of it, but, you know, if you got cash and other, particularly immigrants, you know, they come in here, they recognize you have it here and you can take it, you know you're getting paid for your services. You're
Bars and restaurants are probably our toughest, because generally they're first-time business owners, they may be immigrants, the receipts generally get wet.
Right.
And
thought about
during
that.
the process. So
problem.
going back you know, we can wait 3 years to audit them. So going 3 years later, walk in and say, show me all your receipts, can be really tough. So we'll help them reconstruct, and often we're wrong, but they have to prove us wrong.
You probably get a variation of the dog ate my homework when it comes to reconstituting some of these receipts.
Yes, not a variation, every possible variation of dog ate my homework, because records disappear.
Yeah.
We've had catastrophic fires in California. We had one lady that came, her manager embezzled from her and destroyed the evidence by throwing all the records into the river. It was floating down the river.
Okay, now that's an excellent. That's not something you would normally, you know, prepare for. And so, how do you do that? You go and reconstruct what you think they should do, or do you let them come to you and say, "This is what I did"? Or I guess it's a proactive or reactive in a situation.
It depends partly on our auditor, how well they're trained and how much they understand business. Then it's partly on the business owner, how much they want to cooperate with us to tell their story honestly and then help us reconstruct their business if the records are missing. And a lot of the cases are resolved without coming to our board on appeal, which tells me the system does work. I know it does. I just want it to work better.
Well, for people out there that wonder if you're riding around an armored truck to all these stores and picking up money, or whether you wait once a year, I mean, how do people file it? Can they file electronically? Do they mail it in? How does it
We're moving everybody to the internet. In fact, we now mandate the bigger retailers to not only electronically file their return, but electronically give us the money.
We get it quicker that way,
We
too.
get it quicker that way. No.
And by the way, we need your money, so
No
keep it
checks
flowing in.
involved. Well, I try to convince our board. I said, why don't we give an incentive, just like retailers
sure.
do? If you want to pay me electronically, I'll give you 5 days more float period to pay. I'll change the deadline. The deadline is January 31st for most annual filers.
Yeah.
And I say, instead of sending us a check that will take days to cash, give me the money electronically. I'm even trying to give us credit card payments. You know, give me your credit card number, pay the amount, let us get the money, but we'll give you 5 days of float period as an incentive for paying us that way. And it eases our collection. If we get electronic transfer or a credit card, the money's good. If we get a check, we got to make sure there's sufficient funds to cash it.
Well, and even though the banks are cashing checks quicker, you still have that float period and just the uncertainty there.
Well, the sadness is we're behind the times. We open mail by hand machine, mostly manually.
Really?
We do deposits of checks like a small business would. I'm trying to move us to a modern age where we can actually process it faster.
I doubt that your section of the government is any different than the others. We do tend to lag behind. There's certainly a cost to modernize, and yet there's a cost not to modernize.
Exactly.
And but I like your idea of using some business principles here. I know when I was selling product, I offered a 2% 10 net 30.
There you go.
And I had some customers that would regularly take that 2% discount and pay me, and I was happy for that.
You got the money.
And like right now, our state is in a cash flow problem, so if we had the money up front, that helps us out. We don't have to go out and borrow money or issue IOUs or all those things. So